Constitution, join the revolution. Lawful rebellion, our rights, the British Constitution. We stand for a future we control. Our heritage lies in free men's souls. We fight to call.
Okay, and we're off. Well, Roger, thanks again for coming into the Lawful Rebellion UK paltalk room on the second attempt. Thanks very much indeed. Your presence is always very, very welcome. We'll start off tonight, Roger, with the first question that I've got. I know you're busy and you've been held up a bit tonight, but I hope you've had a little bit of chance to look at the Leveson report came out today. What's your take on it?
Well, in truth, I really haven't had much time to look at the Leveson report, but our anticipation was that they would try and impose media controls, and I do know that's exactly what they're putting together, of course. Parliament wants to hide behind as much secrecy as it can, and of course this is just a classic cover-up. What we also know about the Leveson report is that Mr. Bell, who was the chairman, was actually common purpose, and this has always been a common purpose initiative to close down the press or the media because they didn't want us knowing too much. That's the bottom line behind the Leveson report.
Yeah, I agree on that, Roger. Points being made about what's come out today is that the Leveson report is only making official what is actually going on at present anyway, in that we don't have a free press as it is. They are being restricted on what they can say through injunctions, etc., that are put out, D-notices, and every other sort of thing that's going on. Now, somebody mentioned this earlier on, Roger, and I'd just like what your opinion is on it. They reckon this could actually backfire on the press for the simple reason, I believe it's the last 9 months, that no local newspaper, Sunday newspaper, daily newspaper has actually shown any sign of increasing its circulation. Now, a lot of us tend to think that the press now have gone from acceptance mode, as far as being told what to print, to survival mode, because a lot of them can see that maybe their jobs would be in jeopardy on this, and there are journalists, as I'm sure you know, out there who would actually like to print the truth and the news as it happens. Do you think there's a possibility that this could actually, stir the nest as far as journalists goes and come back and backfire on the government?
Absolutely, big time. There's a few things that are playing out here which is quite interesting. First and foremost, that the internet is already challenging the supremacy of the media, and already the media are being pushed and forced into doing stories, or they're being released like the UK column are putting out. And I think what's going to happen now is they're going to be frustrated because they're going to be very nervous about publishing the stories that the likes of the internet and UK column will publish. And there's thousands of blogs out there. And I think this business recently about the release through Twitter is an attempt to try and attack ordinary people. That's going to be another interesting thing that will pan out over the next months and possibly years. But they're never going to be able to close down the internet. That's the one thing they missed. And I think the one area where the media, the control of the media, missed out entirely was this internet. They really missed that one. And all over the world now, the internet is the one thing that will spread the message. I noticed in Syria, just in today's paper, that the internet went down in Syria because they've been using that to organise troops against the Syrian government, haven't they? So yeah, it's all very interesting. But what we do know is it's all leading to one simple thing, and it's control of the media, because they know full well the truth is getting out there big time.
Yeah, exactly. And the point I'm trying to get across here, and I hope you can agree with this, is that the journalists now really want, because they're in survival mode, their newspapers and jobs are threatened, they actually want the truth to come out. So there will be a bit of a backlash against the results of the Leveson report today. Talking about Syria, of course, the BBC came on just about half an hour ago and said that the internet had been closed today, and they're now blaming terrorism, which of course we know is not true. The people who are committing the war on terrorism are the terrorists that are in governments. But an interesting point as far as my local paper goes tonight, and I picked this up before you came on, Roger, is that, most journalists do actually want to tell the truth and are keen to give, a fair and honest representation of the news and what's going on both locally and nationally. Now, one journalist has put a comment in, and he says that the Leveson report is actually a scam. He states that most journalists would love to openly and honestly portray the truth, but it's the fact that a couple of bad journalists, probably for the News of the World and the Sunday Mirror, have actually got this report down to stifle everybody, and everybody in his local office at the moment is not very happy at all. So there is an air of, rebellion within my local paper in South Wales. And again, we think, do you really think that, journalists will actually stand up to say this and say, enough is enough? Because really, generally, we just need one newspaper or one journalist in a newspaper to say, I am breaking ranks from what I'm being told to say, and would it escalate after that?
Well, in response to your comment about the journalists, there's going to be growing anger there because the journalists, are on the internet, they're reading the stories, they're getting the message, they're starting to get frustrated because they're not able to talk print the truth anyway, and now it's going to be restricted, and there's going to be, the editors are fearful they're going to be sued, so those controls are definitely going to backfire big time. And I think it's going to have a very significant impact on the politicians as well, because the politicians are using the excuse, oh, it wasn't us, it was the, it's a judge that's making these decisions about what we can do and what we can't do, which is a nonsense, of course. The politicians are always using for excuse to say it wasn't us, it was somebody else. It's the same tactic they use with the European Union. It's not us that's imposing these restrictions, it's somebody else, ducking out from under the covers, as it were. Now, in principle, we're talking about terrorist activity. We know who the real terrorists are, don't we? And it's not the people who are fighting for the freedoms, it's actually the oppressive regimes that are in place at the moment.
Yes, of course it is. Another point to make on that, Roger, we all know in this room, and people involved in lawful rebellion, and even people that are waking up now in the general public, know that it is the government that actually controls the judiciary. Now, if we know that, the press know that as well. And a suggestion that was made as far as breaking Leveson itself was that the media should follow common law as far as it reports everything, and as long as it reports everything on a truthful level, there wouldn't be any problems, would there?
But it's a very good point that suddenly the media will actually realise, okay, they're being restricted to do something what they can do quite lawfully and openly under common law. So this is a brilliant opportunity for us to push those buttons, because we say, well, you're controlled, but we're not controlled under common law because we have a right to do these things. And I think this is where the free man movement is going to score enormous points, because ultimately, under common law, we can do whatever we want as long as it doesn't cause harm or injury. And of course, that's a very simple principle, that if we're talking the truth, and that's the important point, as opposed to issuing propaganda, then we're entitled to do that, aren't we? Freedom of speech, wasn't that part of our basic principles? Our basic constitution is a freedom of speech?
Well, yes, exactly. It is. That's a good point. And I was going to basically ask a follow-on question, but you've answered it, and that was, as a movement in lawful rebellion, should we be encouraging the newspapers and the media to follow common law? I can assume, obviously, by your answer then, Roger, that these suggestions will be put to the mass media to forget about the legislation that the government's put down and the results of the Leveson inquiry, just to ignore it and stick to common law where, the truth is told, nothing libelous is put out there, and we shouldn't have any problems. Or let's put it like this, the media and press shouldn't have any problems.
Well, that's right. And again, let's try and divide the media into two components here. First and foremost, we've got the owners of the newspaper who obviously direct the newspapers themselves. They allow a little bit of leeway, but now we've also got the journalists who think that they work for or thought that they work for a free press, are now a bit more focused on the reality that it's being controlled. And I think there's going to be a conflict between the editors of the press and the journalists themselves, which is going to cause problems, especially when the journalists see that the internet is covering stories that they don't touch. And those stories are going to get more and more interesting, because we've now got a very important thing that's happening with Magna Carta 2015. I can tell you that there's a real buzz out there. So we're going to be pushing the Constitution, the rule of law, the free man movement, and so on and so forth. And I imagine that what's going to happen is, because the journalists themselves aren't able to publish a lot of this stuff, they're going to be searching to find out what the new mainstream media is actually talking about. They're already picking up on the vibes. They're already starting to ask questions. They're already starting to get the point that there's genuinely a lawful rebellion. It's growing in this country, and they won't be able to publish it, and that's going to really hack them off.
Well, of course they can publish it if they do want to come on board with us, and I think a lot of people are getting really, really disillusioned in newsrooms at the moment, because I feel personally that there's no such thing any longer as investigative journalism or real journalism, especially for the hacks that's been there for many, many years. You made the point there that they're getting all the news stories now from the alternative media on the internet, and that must be pretty demoralizing, I would think, for somebody who wants to put a story out and wants to get the truth and wants to say, hold on, this injunction is a criminal injunction that's been put on to stop me from telling exactly what my local council or what my local social services are doing. But of course, if they adhere to common law, they then, if my interpretation of this is correct, would not have a problem, because perhaps you could confirm this point and tell me if I'm wrong. A lot of the restrictions that are being put on newspaper journalists and editors at the moment are being done by lawyers who know nothing at all about editorial or anything about newspapers, but are there basically just for the point to make sure that they don't go outside of the law and are likely to be taken to court on, being sued.
Well, that's a two-way street, of course, and I think in the past that the lawyers themselves have built up this castle of defence around them, and whereas they, on behalf of their clients, whoever they might be, have threatened to sue people, maybe the commercial lien needs to be brought to the fore to use against the lawyers. They are denying people the right to tell the truth. They can't do that. And yet they're trying to build up these statutes to control this situation. So I think the commercial lien is probably a very effective way to attack the lawyers. I was just talking to someone this morning actually about the commercial lien process and how it's evolved from nothing has taken so far and is now a bit stalled. And yet I do know of a gentleman who I helped with a commercial lien against a lawyer firm in Manchester, and a very quick story, because it's not relevant to Leveson, but it is relevant to how we can deal with lawyers, is the lawyer firm, he was accusing them of if you like, taking money from his mother's estate, and he wrote to them for 10 years. They refused to respond to him, they ignored him, the usual stuff. He couldn't get anywhere, he was getting frustrated and angry. And when I spoke to him, I said, well, why don't you hit them with a commercial lien? Well, boy, did things change. He hit them with a £9 million commercial lien, and the last I spoke with him, he said, boy, they don't ignore me now. And they took out an injunction in a court, a high court, obviously a bench judge, to stop him issuing the commercial lien, having said to him that it's a load of rubbish. So I believe the answer to a lot of the restrictions is to start hitting these people with commercial liens against the so-called judges. I think they're the ones that are part of this whole control thing that we need to deal with.
Okay, sounds a great idea, Timmy. Just briefly to finish on the Leveson report, of course, the NUJ has got a code of conduct as to how its journalists and its editors are supposed to act. Now, if you read the code of conduct, and I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, the fact that they're denying us the truth under public interest law, they're actually breaking their own code of conduct, Roger. And I've actually tried this, but I've actually got no reply back. So, once again, the pressure is on them as far as their own code of conduct goes. And I know a couple of journalists are looking at this, saying, well, we either need to adhere to the code of conduct, which means we tell the truth and as openly and as fairly as we possibly can, or the NUJ basically, and one rep has actually said this to his local union guy, you either need to readjust the NUJ code of conduct to suit Leveson. So I think there's going to be quite a bit of interesting times ahead as far as the media goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's two elements here. First and foremost, in terms of, well, code of conduct sort of smokescreen normally anyway, but I think the journalists who probably believe they're there for the best interest of journalism, I think some of them are actually going to take this one to the wire and challenge the decisions, challenge statutes, and I'm pretty certain that somebody in our group is going to inform them, well, why don't you do it under common law? So, it's going to play out very interesting in the next several months. The other side of this whole agenda is how the courts are being used as a tool of control, and I think what we need to do is we need to start attacking, the judges and our common law rights as well. So, I believe this is going to play out in our favour in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys that just piped in there that he said, Roger, contact the editor of The Spectator. He says he's prepared to go to jail rather than adhere to the new rules. So, that's going to be encouraging, isn't it?
Well, again, Spectator, mainstream media, he says he's going to go to prison. Well, he's going to have enough opportunity on his own without me contacting to prove that he's genuine. We'll just see how that one plays out.
In July this year, you were jailed for 21 days for withholding your council tax. Could you explain to the room everything that happened?
Okay. Obviously, since I think it's 5 years now, I haven't been paying my council tax. The first year they withdrew, and that was a sort of a mini victory. Then the second and the third year, they wound it up into an amount, and then they bankrupt my legal fiction. I was written to, the official receiver wrote to me and said that I've been made bankrupt, and I wrote back saying, no, I haven't, that's a legal fiction, Mr. Roger Hayes, it's got nothing to do with me. And he said, well, we want all the details of your assets, and I said, I'm not going to fill in the form. The long and the short of it is they threatened to take me to court, and I said, I'll see you in court, and they backed down. What they asked for was an indefinite adjournment on the case. The next thing is, of course, the council continued to send out bills for the legal fiction. It's interesting, isn't it, that if somebody is bankrupt or the legal fiction is bankrupt, you're actually not supposed to invoice them. So how was it the council invoicing me? They just ignore their own rules. So ultimately, again, I refused, and the next stage was apparently they had a committal hearing without informing me. That's against the law. There was a door knock at 7:30. The police arrived. They asked at the door, are you Mr. Roger Hayes? And I said, no, I'm not. It's a legal fiction. Do you know what a legal fiction is? They looked blank. I said, okay, come in, I'll explain it. Nice policeman, no issues, no arguments, just a nice, quiet conversation. And they then decided they were going to arrest me. And I said, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to actually have to put in your book this. And I told them the fee was £10,000, which they duly did. The policeman that actually took me to the station was a nice guy. We had a bit of a chat on the way. Interesting, they all knew about Birkenhead, of course. Eventually arrived at the police station. I wouldn't give my name. I wouldn't cooperate. They said, don't mess us around. I said, I'm not messing you around. It's my right to remain silent. And that means you can remain silent. Eventually I got to the magistrate's court. Somebody asked me, was I Roger Hayes? One of the other guys in the cell came in and said, am I Roger Hayes? I said, yes, I am. Why? And he said, well, my sister's just come down to offer her support for him, and the place was full of police. And when she asked the police why they were there, they responded, well, it's because they've just arrested Roger Hayes. So very humorous. But I think, the Birkenhead thing has made a massive impact on them. For example, we know that judges now hire private security for their protection, and I think that's a very interesting point. It must be costing them a fortune. So every time a free man turns up, they call out the police. The police will be getting very frustrated and very angry, because when we go into the courts and we are challenging the courts, what's going on now, I know this for a fact, the police are actually refusing to turn up when the courts ask them to, because they know we're always peaceful. We're arguing a good run for their money, but we're not being violent. So the police know that, and in many ways it disarms them. Coming back to the court case, I was obviously handcuffed, taken into the magistrates' court. They asked me for my name, and I said quite categorically, I'm not Mr. Roger Hayes. They said, well, as far as I'm concerned, you are. I said, are you making a judicial decision that I'm Mr. Roger Hayes? And he said, yes. I said, that point is noted. That, of course, puts him in the dock with regards to me suing him, because that decision was against my statutory declaration that I'm not the legal fiction Mr. Roger Hayes. The 21 days came on the back of me arguing that we all knew what it was about. It was about the legal fiction. I told the judge, you know Mr. Roger Hayes is a legal fiction. I know it's a legal fiction, at which point it's 21 days and away I went. No representation, no opportunity to defend myself, no prior notice of the hearing, no publicity, a closed court as far as I was concerned, because nobody knew I was there, and off to the prison. When I got to the prison, I refused to answer to the name Roger Hayes. I decided I was going to answer only to Roger. So I was the last person taken through, and they were a bit confused about what was going on, obviously. So I had to explain. They were a little bit terse with me initially, because, again, they said, don't mess us around. I said, I'm not messing you around. I'm just protecting my rights. I am not Mr. Roger Hayes. My name is Roger. Call me Roger. And what you also need to know is I'm hunger strike as of right now. I'm a political prisoner. So things evolve from there. You need to know, and I think it's a very important point, that whilst they don't understand, they're not... whilst they don't understand what's going on, they're not in support of us. But as they start to learn, we're starting to get a great deal of support. And one of the prison guards, wards, whatever they call them these days, I'm not familiar with prison, you'll understand. What he came up to me and said, we've seen the videos, Roger, we actually support you, which is very positive stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I've heard this story from you before, and I've got to be honest, I'm sort of giggling away at this side of the microphone, so in hindsight I should have probably asked you this last of all. So I've got a bit of a smile on my face. When you were arrested, I believe you weren't allowed to phone your wife or make your statutory one free phone call, and for reasons of law that I've forgotten, maybe you can explain your 21-day sentence. You had no right of appeal. Could you just go into that a bit more?
Okay, well, I think the proposition is that I went to the police station and I have a right to remain silent. I exercise that right to remain silent by saying nothing. And they decided to withhold my right to a phone call, which is, of course, totally unlawful. So I didn't have the opportunity to phone my wife and tell her what was going on. I think the other key point about this is that they are holding us to ransom based on if we don't cooperate with them, they're going to withhold our rights. Well, of course, again, that puts the sergeant on the desk up for a claim against unlawful imprisonment and also denial of due process, denial of my rights, and so on and so forth. That's the first thing. The other thing about the actual 21 days, which is more from interest, is that you don't get a rebate on the time because you're a civil prisoner, you're not a criminal prisoner, so you serve the full time. They're not used to civil prisoners there. It's a very rare occurrence that they get a civil prison in there. So they weren't sure of the protocol. They had to do a bit of homework. Another interesting point that the prisons, they got a lot of phone calls, a great deal of support came through, which was brilliant. Some people were abusive, and I don't approve of that at all. He did tell me that, and I said, well, I apologise unreservedly for the abusive phone calls, but people get excited, they're angry, but that's not our style. We need these people on board. So yes, we should ring up. Yes, we should complain. Yes, we should let them have our views, etc. But we should not be abusive. If we're abusive, we lose them. Now, people should know we have got policemen as members of our group. We've got prison warders as members of our group. So, across the broad spectrum, we've got the military. We have got people joining our group from within the ranks of the police, the army, the navy, the air force, and the prison service. So we must respect them for the fact that at this point in time, there's not a lot they can do. When we have built our organisation, when we are big enough, they will have somewhere to go. So in the meantime, let's keep these people on board. I hope I've answered the questions, by the way.
Yes, you have, Roger. Thanks for that indeed. But one thing I want to point out is that you did go on hunger strike, and I know we've got a question from somebody who's in the room later who just wants a couple of minutes of your time at the end of the interview to ask some advice from you. But if you go on hunger strike, Roger, I think you said that they will give you a private room. Is that correct?
Yeah. Tongue in cheek, I say you get your own room and an ensuite. Yes, you do. If you go on hunger strike, and it's something you should remember, that you get your own room because they regard you as a self-harmer, and they keep a watch on you. The benefit, of course, is that you, in my case, I don't sleep a lot. I probably do 5 hours a night normally, so I'm normally up quite late and normally up in the morning. So I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and reading and doing my exercises and so on and so forth. So from my perspective, it was actually quite good. I wasn't disturbing anybody else. I had my books there, had my writing materials there. I was drinking water. I drank water for 10 days. Just so, people should understand a hunger strike. It's a frame of mind. Your body doesn't suffer at all. If you feel that you're going to be hungry, then you're going to be hungry. So if you say, right, from now on, I'm just drinking water, that's the food I have, you just get on with it. You really aren't suffering at all. I lost 1 stone in weight, which is a big bonus. My wife was delighted. She thought I should go back for another month. And when I actually came off the hunger strike and I had my first prison meal, I realised that going on hunger strike was the best thing I ever did. So again, the bonuses are there all the way through. I took up an exercise regime, so I was fitter, healthier, slimmer, and all round I felt very, very good. The other thing, of course, is no telephone, nobody bothering me, so I did a great deal of work. And in fact, I devised in the prison the Magna Carta 2015 initiative, which I think is going to be a very powerful tool to take us to our sovereign independence again. And the other very important thing, of course, is that within the context of the hunger strike, is the medical staff will look after you. I asked them to print off a report about what happens with a hunger strike, and they tell you that the first thing that starts to go, the first thing that happens is your cholesterol goes down, your blood pressure goes down, it all goes back to normal. So it's a very positive thing indeed.
Okay, excellent stuff, Roger. Thanks for that. I'm going to touch on something else as well. You've already mentioned that it had something to do with your incarceration. The arrest of Judge Peake in Birkenhead in March 2011. Brilliant as far as we were concerned. It was a fantastic thing that happened. What has it achieved today, and how has it changed things?
Okay, well, I think that the arrest of Michael Peake, that's what you're referring to, then that has made a very, very big impact, not least of which it was the first time that a judge was arrested in his own court for 100 years. Very, very significant. Obviously, the other important thing is that they didn't do anything to me or come at me for arresting the judge. He actually then retired. He never had another hearing, took early retirement. So there was something there that we struck a chord. I think the other important point is other judges are very nervous, and we have seen where free men go into. There was one issue, I explained this in Australia. I got a phone call from Australia, and he said, I wonder whether you could explain something to me. And I said, go on. He said, we went into court, we're doing the free man stuff, we were up in the front bench there, and the judge asked us to go back 3 benches. We went back, but we didn't understand why. And I just laughed and I said, I know exactly what that's all about. The judge was scared of being arrested, so that's why they wanted a bit more distance. And we've also had people report to us that judges have come in and they leave the door open. So the psychology of this is amazing, but it has had that impact, definitely.
Okay, Roger, thanks very much for that. That's brilliant. You got me giggling again here, so I'll try and put my straight face back on. Next question is, last weekend, the BCG conference was held for 2 days in Stoke. Now, a lot of the videos and things haven't come out. I know they're being worked on, and there's a lot of stuff to do. But can you just give us a brief overview of what happened and, the feedback you got from the meeting? We believe there was about 350 to 400 people turned up, which is absolutely fantastic. Can you just give us a report and, just tell us what your gut feeling is, how things are going, and what BCG Lawful Rebellion have got planned?
Okay, a lot to cover in that question, so let's deal with the actual conference itself. The first observation that was made by a lot of people is that's Middle England there now. We haven't got, just the unemployed and the anguished, as it were. We've got Middle England who are waking up. That is a very significant point. The other important issue was that we had two conferences. Well, we had the one on the Saturday and the follow-up on the Sunday. The Sunday meeting was the Committee of 100, which I'll explain in a moment. But the general demeanour of the attendees was very, very positive indeed. The quality of the attendees, people who are, just ordinary, decent Brits who have just had enough. And they've come to express their support. They've come to sort of get to grips with what we can do about it. And I think that the general consensus at the end of the conference is they now understand that the British Constitution Group has the solution to the problem, packaged up in the lawful bank, Magna Carta 2015, the Committee of 100, and of course the work that the BCG has done, the membership, and of course the UK column. Now, to explain the package, I mean, we're talking about the management, we're talking about the media, we're talking about the money, and we're talking about the masses. So the money is the lawful bank, the media, of course, is the UK column. The masses comes from marketing through Magna Carta 2015. The point about Magna Carta 2015 is that this is the perfect marketing opportunity because Magna Carta is all about our freedoms and our liberties, and it's about the government not disobeying the laws. The laws are there for everybody. We haven't got rid of the king to only have the oppression by government. It's the people who are sovereign, and the government serves the people, not the other way around. So Magna Carta is the marketing opportunity to put that in front of people. And of course, then on top of that, we start talking about the banking scam. Everybody collectively, when you ask people what they think about the politicians and what you think about the bankers, everybody says the same thing. They think they're all criminals. And what we're saying is, okay, therefore let's replace the banking and replace the politicians. And of course, that's the process that we're starting to talk about. Policy politics, not party politics. We're cutting the legs from under the politicians and from under the actual political parties because we're saying they're hopeless, they haven't done the job, we've done that, been there, hasn't worked, let's move on. And let's move on by introducing a completely new system of politics, and we're doing that with Magna Carta 2015 with a declaration of our sovereign government, and that's the way this thing is going to pan out.
Yeah, I agree with you, Roger, on that one. A few guys that I've known for years have agreed with what I've said, and, everything's corrupt, the banking system's corrupt. Their words have been, I should say, you'll never break the system, you'll never change it. Today, they're asking for answers as to how we change the system, and they believe it can be done. Just a matter of interest about Stoke. They're well attended, and I know it was well attended, 350 to 400 people. Did you get any media coverage at all from mainstream media or any such like?
No, we don't. And to be perfectly honest, my approach is not to actually go there yet. We'll save this to a more appropriate time, and then we'll start inviting the mainstream media in. There's a time and a place to actually go down that road, and it's not yet. What's happening at the moment, and again coming back to the conference, because the message, people came from four corners of the United Kingdom, and it's often very expensive to attend these conferences. Although we only charge £10, it's the travel expenses and the overnight staying, etc. The mere fact that we're getting the coverage all over the country is important, and also people are going back to their communities, their groups, and for every individual that attends our conferences, we know that there's dozens and dozens of people behind the scenes who would have liked to have attended. I think one of the things that we will be working towards is a streaming process. So the next conference we should have streaming all over the country. So we look forward to be able to capture the hearts and minds of so many more people. But also by then, the Magna Carta 2015 initiative is going to be well and truly underway then. And I personally am very excited by the prospects of Magna Carta 2015.
Okay, Magna Carta 2015, questions just been typed in very quickly. Magna Carta 2015, what exactly is it, Roger?
It's a declaration of our sovereign governance. The proposal is that we will have 3 constitutional conventions, June 2013, June 2014 and June 2015, culminating in the Declaration of Sovereign Governance. Based on all the work we've done today, we, the British people, have a right to govern ourselves. That is written in our constitution. It's a law of the land. It's been completely defied by the politicians. And I think most of the listeners on this website will agree that basically they had no right to transfer national sovereignty to a foreign power, and we have a right to govern ourselves, and that's exactly what we are going to do. We're not going to ask them, in the same way that they did not consult with us, we are not going to consult with them. A free people does not ask for their sovereignty, they declare it, and that's what we're going to do. And as one of your listeners has quite rightly said, it is treason. So we move down that road. We are setting up our own peace constables. We've set up a website now. It's not live, but we're calling for men and women all over the country to join us peace constables. We've obviously got the bank going. We've now got the initiative. We've got our first points of contact, which we kicked off about 18 months ago, but we've not fully activated that because it's of the time that it took to actually organise it, but we've now got people who are going to do that for us. So what we're looking at is a network of activists all over the country working in unison with the same objective, the same target, which is Sovereign Governance 2015.
Thanks for that, Roger, very much indeed. Yeah, it is treason what the political elite have done. Just a question might help with some people here. Tony Blair actually abolished treason, the crime of treason. How are we going to get around that?
It was treasonous to do so. It doesn't count. It still stands. Still stands.
Okay, thanks, Roger, for that. Going back to Stoke, you mentioned briefly the Committee of 100 was formed. Can you tell us, what's the role of the Committee of 100? How were they allocated, and how's it moving forward?
Okay, the Committee of 100 is a management group. We've had 3 meetings, about 30 to 40 people turned up at the first 2 meetings, and about 60 odd turned up at the 3rd meeting. People put themselves forward. What we've suggested to people is, if you feel that you have something to offer the management group to take the Magna Carta 2015 to fruition by 2015, step forward and tell us what you can do. Do an A4 paper on it to explain, and the committee will decide, collectively will decide whether we want to adopt that. If you achieve the objective, well, basically you stay on the committee and you take your objective to its fruition. For example, I put myself forward as the person that would actually get a banking system up and running. In my proposal, I've said I will have a banking system working by May 2013, and that's what I will do. So if I achieve the objective, then I earn the right to stay on the Committee of 100 to help the group take it to the final stage. So anybody and everybody is invited to put themselves forward, and what will happen, of course, is the movers and the shakers and the leaders will float to the top, will come to the fore. So it's open to all comers. It's open to all groups. It's not just a BC group membership. Obviously, it does attract a great number of our members, but it's not exclusive to BCG. So it's designed to be all-encompassing, as it were. So it is a management group, and as I say, the purpose is to get us from A through to the end goal of sovereign declaration. But the other interesting thing about it is it's about, if we want to govern ourselves, we have to look like governance, sound like governance, present ourselves as governance. So each of the individuals that puts themselves forward, we're going to start videoing their presentations, so we end up with a horizontal management group. So any individual that does well in presenting their argument, their case, in video, that goes live on the internet. We start promoting the Committee of 100. People start to see a whole range of people coming forward, and what will happen is people will say, hang on a minute, this group means business, they look credible, they sound credible, and they've got a credible campaign underway. So that's the whole purpose of the Committee of 100, is to provide a credible front.
Well, that's fantastic news, Roger. For people like myself and yourself who tend to sort of, skirt close to the law, etc., etc., there's been a lot of interest in the Liberty Bell system, which I believe originated in America. Are we thinking about introducing a similar system in the UK? And could you maybe tell the listeners exactly what it is?
Well, yes, we do have a plan already underway. We're calling it, it's actually referring to it as flash assist. Some of your listeners will be familiar with the flash crowd scenario, which is that you can send a message on somebody's mobile phone and ask them to be at a specific location at a particular time. So we're going to use the technology. We have on board one of our members, somebody who's very, very good at the telecommunications side of things. So what we're going to do is that we are going to ask people to register as peace constables, and we're going to send out, so for example, if a bailiff knocks on your door and you're not paying your council tax, you make a phone call, and within minutes there'll be a group of people around you. The message that we'll be saying to bailiffs is, these people are a member of the British Constitution group, go away. Okay, so that's going to be a very forceful message. The object exercise is for the peace constables to turn up at the door of people who are being harassed by bailiffs, etc. And the job is to attend, observe, record, and witness. Yeah. So it's not confrontational, but that pressure being brought to bear on bailiffs, etc., when they are trying to enforce unlawful claims by councils, etc., is going to be very impressive. But also when the police are there backing up bailiffs when they haven't got lawful warrants, they're going to go away thinking, what's this, what are they talking about, common law versus, acts of parliament, and so on and so forth. So, we've got a lot going for us because we've done our groundwork. We've got the foundation in place to keep pushing, and eventually their system is going to collapse.
Yeah, I agree. I hope it does, and I hope it happens very soon. A question that's come in, which is going to lead on from what you basically just said there, Roger, is quite simply, it says, John Hurst spoke about common law. What's the difference between common law and legislation and the legal system? Government doesn't make law, so who does?
The common law protects our rights, our freedoms, our liberty, our lives. Okay, that's a very important point. Whereas legislation controls. There is no except. Legislation is discriminatory. It can be applied to one group without the other. So there's a very, very big difference between the law which protects and the legislation which controls. And of course, the government does not make laws. Laws are made effectively by the judgments of juries. And of course, Parliament makes legislation. And as I've said, legislation is often discriminatory, and it doesn't have the same quality as the law of the land.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Thanks for that. Another question is coming in, and I've actually sent the video off to several people as well. I've had a response from everybody, but they don't actually believe it really is that simple. It's about Justin Walker's presentation on the greenback pound. Is it really that simple to have our own currency, our own towns up and running?
It really is that simple. It's all down to the critical mass of people. If I created my own money, I do explain this in my presentation, is that I tomorrow can create my own money. If my supplier agrees to supply me goods, I can give him an IOU promising to pay for those goods over the next period of time, 12 months. That in effect is money. An IOU is money, and anybody that looks at a pound note, or at least a £5 note, will see that it just says promise to pay. Now, if you go to a supplier that you know, he will give you the credit. If you go to a supplier that you don't know, then he's looking for some intermediary, some form of guarantee. And that's what the banks actually do. The banks provide the currency, the money, through digital money, and they act as the guarantor. So that's a subtle difference. So what we're doing is through the lawful bank is we're creating our own guarantors through the pledge. Everybody that signs up to lawful bank pledges to pay £100 if ever asked to do so. And of course the point is we will never ask them to do so, because that's the point. It's just a pledge. It's just an insurance premium. If you go to a company and you've got a document that's signed by 1 million people promising to pay £100 if ever asked to do so, that's 100 million quid. You can borrow against that because it's a very, very strong document, because it's backed by so many people. So the whole point about making your own money is that you are getting an advance on your own wages. That's all it is. When you get a mortgage, you don't get the money until you sign the document. When you sign the document, they create the liquidity on the back of it. And with the greenback pound, the idea, of course, is that the Bradbury pound was issued in 1914 by the Treasury, and the government issued money interest-free, and that's what they should have continued to do. But at the same time, at that period, what happened after the war was the banks deliberately eased the liquidity, causing inflation. And then they turned around and said that the government caused the inflation by issuing the Bradburys. Of course, that is a nonsense, as anybody could see by comparing the fact, well, when the banks issue money with interest, why doesn't that cause the same inflation as when the government issues money without interest? It's a nonsense claim. But thereafter, of course, that the scenes behind closed doors were putting pressure on government to withdraw the Bradbury, because it was obviously costing the banks. So that's the simple reality, is the government should issue our own money. It's a very simple process. They should be doing it, and it would be saving us all billions and billions of pounds in taxes.
Yes, indeed, agree totally on that, Roger. You mentioned again critical mass. As in any movement, we need to reach critical mass. How big do we need to be, roughly, to reach critical mass? And how far away from it, or are we there, or a long way off at the moment?
Okay, well, there's two elements there. There's critical mass vis-a-vis the money, and there's critical mass vis-a-vis defying government. Obviously, the rule of law, as far as government is concerned, is the rule of force. Their ability to enforce their laws is entirely down to the police. They're the enforcers. They're the ones that will knock on your door and take you away, whether you've broken the law or not. The government says jump, the police will jump. So we need to build our peace constable force up to a level which would be seen as something that they don't want to deal with, right? So peaceful, but it's making an impression. It's saying to government, the people have had enough and we're building our numbers, and there's a lot more of us than there are of them. So that's the first message that we send by building the peace constables. As far as the monetary system is concerned, the critical mass is not a very high number at all. In fact, the critical mass in a small village, where you have most of the resources that you need, could be a matter of a few hundred people. When you start talking about the critical mass on a national basis, again, as long as you can access most of the things that you want, then the critical mass number could be quite a low number, maybe in the 100,000 figure. It's very achievable. It's not a large number, but, and this is a big but, the more we get, the more effective we'll be, and and once we got to that level whereby we're accessing a fair proportion of the resources that we need, 20%, 30%, we've got this in the bag, and that's the most important point. Once we get to that level, there is no stopping us, because once we're issuing our own money and it's being accepted by people, you can't stop it. And bear this in mind, that we are converting a debt-based system, their system, to a positive liquidity system, our system, because we'll be releasing money into the economy on the back of the fractional reserve system, which a lot of people criticise, but in fact used for the benefit of the people is very, very good indeed. But that actually provides us with positive liquidity as opposed to a debt-based monetary system.
Thanks, Roger. Moving on onto the lawful bank. How soon can we expect lawful bank notes to be printed and the bank to be up and running?
Okay, it will be up and running in May. We already have all of the systems in place, and as I explained at the conference, I now have a bank account, and we've issued £250,000 sovereignty pounds into that account. And once the money starts to move and circulate throughout the lawful bank, that becomes genuine money that we can use, providing obviously we stick to the rules that we agree on. So the lawful bank will be up and running in May. It will be a trial basis on that at that point in time. But importantly, the other thing that we'll be doing earlier on is doing a direct change for sterling. So it will be actually backed by sterling. Anybody who attended the conference will know that somebody from Bristol was there, and they stood up to say that the demand on the Bristol pound has been so strong they've had to delay it because it's been too successful. That's happened in Lewis, that's happened in Brixham, that's happened in Bristol, and Shroud. So we've now got these currencies going around the country, being set up in all these locations. So what the lawful bank will do is bring all those together. It will provide exactly the same as already been done. And I think it's a very important point that people must understand. This is nothing new. This has been done before. So we're only actually capitalising on a previous thing that's been done, something that's happening at the moment. All we're doing is we're making it a national basis. And because our organisation has got that network in place already, we should be able to do this very, very quickly.
Great stuff, Roger. There's been a lot of debate in this room about car insurance. Can you explain to us how car insurance would work under the lawful bank?
Okay. There's two aspects of car insurance. There's the personal liability aspect, and then there's the damage to your vehicle. We actually set about doing our own car insurance with the idea that we would get 1,000 people to put up a bond of £500 each. So that becomes a £500,000 bond to cover the cost of any damage. So 1,000 people driving around with bonded insurance, the likelihood of them spending that £500,000 was very remote. So that covered the car. But then we hit the difficulty, and this is the real difficulty, is that there wouldn't be sufficient money to cover a claim if somebody ran over a banker who was earning £5 million a year. We wouldn't have the resources to cover the personal liability aspect, so that's where we came unstuck. But with a lawful bank, with your own liquidity, you can actually create enough liquidity to cover all those liabilities. So now we've got a situation where the lawful bank, when it's up and running, will provide the appropriate liquidity to be able to provide our own insurance. So how it would work would be, if you want to insure a vehicle, you put a bond down of a fixed amount, £500, and then your insurance premium would be maybe £150, £180 a year each and every year. If you don't have an accident, then you just keep paying £180. If you have an accident that's your fault, you lose your bond. And in order to then reinsure your vehicle, you have to double your bond to £1,000, and your premium would probably double to £360 for 12 months. At that point, your premium would go down, but your bond would stay high. So what that means is that the bad drivers are penalised and good drivers not penalised at all. That's what proper insurance should do, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's only a few drivers that actually cause the bump and stick the normal insurance premiums on cars up for the rest of us. Moving on, Roger, great deal of interest in this. At the conference in Stoke, a 16-year-old girl gave a little speech, and we believe it was on exactly how brainwashing and what's happening in the school curriculums, etc. Can you tell me what she said, and how did she present herself, and how well received she was?
Well, yes, Georgia, lovely little girl. She's 16 years of age. Her father organised, excuse me, a presentation, and I stayed with them overnight and were having a chat with the family. And then the story came out. It was incidental to what we were talking about. I said, "Tell me that again. What happened?" And she was explaining that there was a kerfuffle, and a lady got hit. Not by the father, but the lady was seeking revenge against her father and therefore lied to the police that he had caused the injury. She and two other adults, were prepared to give evidence to the fact that he did not cause the injury, but the police weren't interested. And the story's a little bit more complicated than that, but suffice to say that the police arrested him, and he was told by the judge that he was going to go away for 5 years. The whole thing was extraordinary. The police then offered to pay one of the witnesses to lie, and this came out, and refused point blank to listen to what the daughter had to say. The long and the short of it is this gentleman, her father, was told that if he agreed to take the blame, he would go of 15 months and he would go away for 7. He didn't want to go away to prison for 5. He was obviously aware of the way the whole thing was being set up, so he went to prison. Whilst he was in prison, the children were taken into care, and the social services walked into their family, and that's when she started to pick up what was really going on. A couple of things. These social workers were decidedly a bit odd. One of them wouldn't give his name, would only call himself Graham. He was coming into the school. He wouldn't give his full name. He was desperate to take Georgia under his wings, and she refused to have anything to do with him because she was old enough and smart enough to realise something was going wrong. They took her out of the school, the main school, and put her into another school, a special school, where they discovered that both she and her brother discovered that the teachers were using false names and signed a confidentiality agreement not to actually say who they were. Now, this is extraordinary. So we've got anonymous social workers going into the school, and we've now got a special school set up where nobody knows the real names of the teachers. And even the teachers said they were a bit suspicious about what was going on. But like most people, of course, they just do what they're told because they're getting paid. So we've got something very odd going on in the school. The other thing that was noted about this whole incident was that the head teacher was very, very involved in orchestrating all of this, and we're pretty convinced the head teacher is common purpose. Now, Georgia got on the stage. She was very nervous. She's only 16 years of age. We had a video of the social worker in their home, and if anybody looked like a paedophile, this social worker did. He looked very, very, very strange. And the cameraman was really on the ball. And what brought the conference down was when you heard the cameraman say, off camera, of course, saying, "You're very weird, you're very weird." So, and of course he was. Now, she went down a storm because it was a true story, and what she said, it came across as a genuine story about what happens in families, and it was a real expose about what's going on in the schools, what's going on, how the social workers are actually creeping into our lives and into the lives of children in the schools where the parents don't know what's going on. And bear in mind also, when this father came out of prison, he wasn't allowed to see his children, and these social workers were trying to take control of the children's lives. So that is a very, very worrying affair indeed.
Well, obviously myself, I've got good experience of social workers, but no, you're right in everything you say there. If you phone up most schools now in South Wales, Roger, you'll get, press 1 for the headmaster, 2 to press, to report your child absent, press 3 for, other details, and always like 4 or 5 to go directly through to social services. Some of the bigger schools in South Wales actually have a social services department attached to the school. And, another danger that's coming up around with social services and the push we've got, or the government's got, towards child abuse, is as they close all the little surgeries down that people have been going to for years and years and years and put everything into one big damn medical centre, on one of the floors there, what have you got? You've got social services occupying one complete floor, so if there's any suspected abuse by a child who's taken in who might just be genuinely sick, and the doctor's on, a commission role, or is a bit of an evil bastard, etc., the child could be taken out of the surgery, out of the doctor's surgery, and straight into the hands of social services. Really is a nasty thing we're in at the moment. Would you agree?
Yeah, and there's something else going on there as well, and this is one of the other things that came out of the this video, which we will put online eventually. But they wanted to assess the grandfather. They want to assess everybody in the family. The psychologist wanted to interview Georgia, so they want to get these people, these mind control people in there. And you think it sounds all very innocent, but when you actually look at the overall structure, what's going on, they're trying to actually control the children. Now the thing about Georgia, good on her, she was smart enough to say no. And do you know what she did, which I thought was very brave? And indeed, she went back to the receptions and said, "Who was that man who wanted to talk to me?" And the reception said, "Well, he was the social worker." And she said, do you know his name? And she said, "Well, his name's Graham, sorry." And she said, "Graham who?" And the reception said, "Well, I don't know." And she said, "Well, you shouldn't let him in here. You don't even know he's a social worker and you don't know his name." And of course, she was absolutely right. And when she went home, this same social worker came to their house, and the grandfather quite innocently let him in. And the cameraman there said, "Well, who are you?" And he said, "I'm Graham, I'm the social worker." He said, "Well, where's your ID?" He wouldn't provide any ID. So this whole thing was extraordinary, and this is what's going on in the schools.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. It does seem innocent on the surface, and many parents, etc., think it's innocent. But my opinion, quite simply, what is going on is satanic here. Now, we had a couple of guys from this room, Roger, up at the conference in Stoke, and they were greatly impressed and greatly pleased with the amount of volunteers that came forward on appeal to work with the BCG and Lawful Rebellion in all aspects of our fight and our cause and what we're trying to do as an organisation. Social services apparently was one. I believe a couple of serving social workers came forward and said, "Yeah, I'm going to help you." The feedback on that, Roger, was it as good as the guy said?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be perfectly clear about this. Within the institutions, there are good people, and those good people are now working out what's going on. Previously, they had nowhere to go. Now they know they can come to us, they can trust us. So we've got social workers on board who are helping us to expose what's going on with the likes of Common Purpose. We actually believe that Common Purpose is just about to collapse. That's all thanks to the brilliant work that Brian Gerrish has done, and it just goes to show you what one man can do. All the hard work, and Brian's the first to admit that the reason he's been able to do the work he's been doing is because of all of the feedback that he's been getting from people within the councils and so on and so forth. So that's what happens when people work as a team. That's what happens when you have an organisation that people can go to, and that's what happens when people work together. So we're now getting a group of people. We're hoping to get groups of the police, the army, and so on and so forth working together. Because again, what we have said is that we can't change these institutions. They've got to be changed from within by the people themselves. What we can do is we can provide the place to go, the place to talk, the place to meet, the place where they can find other contacts. Now, what I can also say is that after the conference, the phone calls, the emails that we got, all very, very positive, and people wanting to help, people coming forward and saying, what can we do? But on top of that, we're also getting people who are saying, we thought this is a fantastic conference, and I go back and say, Great. Now, have you thought what you can do to help? Because everybody can do something, and everybody should do something. And the sooner people realise that this will happen when they do something, then the better that's going to be for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I agree with you on that. And Brian Garish does need a massive pat on the back from everybody involved in the struggle for exposing common purpose. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw something on the news, alternative media, not so long ago. I think maybe this week that is it true that Common Purpose as a charity is on the verge of bankruptcy?
Yes, as I say, from what we understand, it's on the verge of collapse. We'll just have to wait and see, because we're not privy to inside information. But we have heard that there's been some noises at the Charity Commission, because, of course, it's a charity, so it can't actually get itself into financial trouble. So, yeah, that looks very, very good. I mean, what we will know, of course, is something else will emerge, so we just got to be very careful what else does emerge. But the infrastructure will be damaged, the credibility will be damaged. But more importantly, one of the things that came to light in the last few weeks is that has everybody noticed the level of comment that was made about Common Purpose in the various news media? It's absolutely incredible. I was gobsmacked. I picked up a Daily Mail, opened the page, and Common Purpose says, Common Purpose, and then 11 pages of Common Purpose. It was extraordinary.
Yeah, it was a shocker and it's a real eye-opener, but somebody said this, and I think it was in the room today, that they haven't spoken about Common Purpose now for a couple of days. Do you think the government's maybe put an injunction on the newspapers, coming back, Leveson press control? Do you think an injunction's been put on the newspapers to stop them mentioning Common Purpose anymore, because it's doing too much damage?
No, the cat is out the bag. And this is the beauty about, the work that we're doing, is that whenever we expose something and we embarrass the media to cover it, they can't put it back in the bag then. And every time we then mention Common Purpose of doing this, that, or the other, and that's the point about Leveson. That's why they had to reveal Bell as being Common Purpose. They couldn't ignore it. So no, they can't close it down once it's exposed. Once they've actually been embarrassed into covering it. And you imagine that what's going on is that the journalists are saying there's this story on the internet. Why aren't we covering this story? Oh, here's another story, the same theme. Why aren't we covering this? They're going to get very suspicious. So eventually they have to start covering it. And of course we also know this. They all read the UK column, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do. If you want to get the proper news, read the UK column. Right, we're making very good time, Roger. I've got two questions left. V, you've just typed in a question, mate. Once we've got through these next two questions, I'll be throwing the room open. I'm sure Roger hasn't got any problem for anybody who wants to put a couple of questions directly to him. I know Rebel Rick's got a question to ask, and we'll take London 25 first. So it shouldn't take us too much longer, Roger. You happy to continue?
Yes, there's a question there about the counterfeiting, which I can cover it. Just let me know when you want me to answer that one.
Okay, we'll deal with that. You can ask the question, once we finish the main interview. Going back to Stoke, Michael Clark says that a gadget that every home could have to generate free electricity is available. You've said, show me the switch. Have you seen the switch yet, Roger?
The answer is no, I have not seen the switch yet, but I can also say that I believe we're so close that we will see something this year. I've been involved in some conversations with a couple of people, and all I can say is I sit there with my jaw open, but I'm not going to make any promises to anybody until I have seen the switch. I've arranged to meet with somebody, hopefully next week, who's quite advanced on some of this stuff. I'm not, an engineer or a chemist or anything else, but I grasp the basics of it all, and yeah, it sounds very, very exciting. There's other things that are going on at the moment which also are quite fascinating. One of the stories is about the electricity delivery service, and I'll tell you what the story is. That this gentleman asked the electricity engineer to read the ampage of the supply coming into his meter, and he read 7 ounce, and then he said, now read the neutral, and the engineer, the electrical engineer, refused to do so. He said, I'm not allowed to do that, and he pressured him, said, don't be silly, there's only you and I here, no one's going to say anything, read it. So they read the neutral cable, and it was 5 ounce. So here's the point. Why is he being charged for 7 amps if there's 7 going in and 5 going out? He's actually not using electricity the way that... So there's something very, very different about the way we've been told about consumption of electricity versus what is actually going on. So if you think about it, why do they actually have a neutral cable going back to the station? The electricity is coming in and going back. It's being effectively reused, isn't it? So there's something going on there which we're being told there's something we can do about it. So that's one of the things which is quite interesting. And again, I'm not going to get into too much details because I don't fully understand the technical aspects of technical argument, but that's work in progress. But there's other things. I mean, the hydrogen machines, which I have seen working, are absolutely fascinating. I've seen the distilling processes. I've seen the alcohol being created. I know that we can create alcohol. I know that you can mix alcohol with oil to get a better burn with the diesel engine, the boosting with the hydrogens. All of these things are improvements that are better than what we've got. Question is, why aren't they being used? And the answer is, of course, they want us burning diesel and petrol exclusively.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything that we seem to face is a result of fraud and being ripped off these days. But just a quick question. If Michael Clark's gadget does become available and we all start using it for free electricity, how are we going to get around it as far as the law at the moment goes? Because obviously the utility companies are not going to be very happy.
Well, bluntly, I don't care. I think again, there's this business about if the government comes out with a law to prevent us using free electricity, what fantastic publicity that will be. I mean, they can use me as an example in the court if they like, because I'd be more than happy to go in court and defend myself against any charges of using free electricity. Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's like everything else. The saying is, what's done in the dark will always come out in the light, and once it's out in the light, it can't go back into the darkness again. Right, we've got the last question I've got, and I'm just looking at the list here. London 25, if you want to put your hand up. Rebel Rick, Birthday Boy Spud, I think you've got a question to ask, and V for Vendetta. If you all want to stick your hands up, once I've asked Roger and got the explanation on this, we'll deal with you one by one. So, Roger, the final question is, Michael Doherty's been going on quite a bit about private prosecutions and malfeasance in public office. Now, I know yourself, you've got a few things on the go at the moment. Can you give us a bit more detail of exactly what this is, how you go about it, and, what you can hope to get as an end result?
Okay, well, Michael Doherty has done some brilliant work because he has taken on the challenge of bringing a couple of policemen who kicked his door down against his common law rights. He's taken out a criminal prosecution against them, and the key word there is a criminal prosecution. And of course, what's happened in the past is that the whole process, the whole prosecution process, has been hidden. Police used to prosecute people. That was taken over by the Crown Prosecution Service. In actual fact, the police were prosecuting under common law. And as I say, that's been removed. So what we're actually doing is we're rediscovering our common law rights. Anybody can prosecute. You do not need the Crown Prosecution Service. And of course, the purpose of the Crown Prosecution Service was to close down any of those cases which were inconvenient for the government. So again, that's what's going on. In my own case, the process I'm going down is I'm taking Abelson, who I'm calling an administrator. I'm taking out a criminal prosecution against Abelson for unlawful imprisonment because my constitution says nobody can imprison me without judgment of my peers, not a single judge, and certainly not an administrator. So that's part of the claim. Denial of due process, unlawful imprisonment, there's a package there. I am going to also include Peake, although he's retired. I'm going to include him on the claim. And the process, of course, is I'm going to write. I've already written to the Magistrates' Court and asked them to. I've told them I want to take out a private prosecution, but I'm now going to write back and ask them if they will facilitate a common law court hearing. And that means that it won't be a judge or administrator, it will be a jury that will make the decision as to whether or not this administrator, aka judge, should be tried. Now, the Magistrates' Court, I know, will come back and say they won't be able to facilitate a common law hearing, at which point I'll say, okay, well, where can I get one? And they're going to say no, and that's going to give us the right to actually have our own common law court hearings. We will summon the administrator, Abelson, to that court, and of course he's not going to show, is he? But I'll tell you what, he'll be twitching. If he's found guilty in our common law court, we will then write to the Chief Constable, and we will ask the Chief Constable to arrest that man, to bring him before our court so we can actually sentence him. The police, of course, are going to say no, and that was our own constables. So this is the way it's going. You know, the rights of the people, when there's enough of us, they can't defy and deny us, as simple as that.
Okay, Roger, well, that's brilliant. One thing before we close, the video of that creepy social worker, I know it's not up on YouTube yet, but I've been asked by the room. We have been looking for it. Once it's up and available on YouTube, Roger, can you manage to get us the link so we can sort of publicise it ourselves?
Yeah, I will do that. It's a private video, so I need to talk to the owner, obviously the gentleman who was filming it. We need to get his permission first and foremost. Before you go, I mean, I do want to deal with that question about the counterfeiting. Just let me know whether you want me to answer it now or you want the gentleman to ask the question.
Okay, well, I think the gentleman who answered that is V for Vendetta, who's next in line. V, if you want to ask the question of Roger, mate, and once you're finished, I'll come back on the mic.
Yeah, hello, Roger. Nice to see you in the room. If you can hear me, can you just put a 1 in the room? Because paltalk's chimping a little bit tonight. Okay. Right, well, my question is, the new currency that we're hoping to bring in. We know that currency probably over the centuries has always been counterfeited to some extent, etc. Are there any kind of reasonable assurances that any of the currency that is going to be coming out will be pretty much, for most people's minds, non-counterfeitable? I think that's it, really, from my point of view. Mike, back to you.
Okay, this is a big issue, and there are several component parts of it. First and foremost, our initial currency will be digital only, therefore it can't be counterfeited. Okay. Secondly, we can come up with a currency that is pretty safe, but you can never guarantee it. There's always ways around it. You can build in tracking systems now with currency, so there's lots of ways in which we can reduce the threat of counterfeiting. But also, this is a very interesting one. The American dollar was the most counterfeited currency on the planet by a big chore. And in fact, it didn't make any difference because it actually added additional liquidity to the marketplace. So counterfeiting money actually benefited the marketplace because there was more money in circulation. So there's that irony that counterfeiting actually does some good. Going back to in the days when currencies were being debased by kings and kings, if you had a silver or gold, what they used to do is they used to chip the edges off it and they used to debase the currency. That actually created more liquidity in the marketplace, and they found that whenever there was a currency debased, the economy boomed. So counterfeiting actually has a positive aspect to it, albeit I'm not condoning counterfeiting. But the answer to your question is, do we have safety precautions? Yes, we do. Can we guarantee that the paper money? No, we can't. So we'll treat that with a great deal of respect. One of the issues also is that because the currency belongs to the people, all of us, potentially we can actually just use debit cards and just spend our cash using cards. That will eliminate the risk. The other thing about people stealing from your bank account, because it's a single bank, a single system, all money is traceable. So if anybody steals money from your account, we know who's done it. So again, because it's a people's bank and our money that's circulating just through one system, it's a much safer system than their system. And bear in mind also that when people were stealing money, the banks thought it was wonderful because that's the game they were up to also.
Okay, Roger, thanks for that. Hope that's answered your question. Okay, V. The reason I left the Michael Doherty private prosecutions and malfeasance in public office is for London 25, who's coming in to ask you a question next, Roger. I hope you heard that, London, about the malfeasance in public office and private prosecutions. So the mic's yours. Be as brief as you can, and you have to put your question to Roger.
Thank you very much, Roger, for listening to me. Right, what it is, I've got a clutch of papers here in front of me. They're all from the council, London Borough of Tower Hamlets, from the chief executive of the legal department. And what it is, it's supposed to be a summons. I believe it isn't a summons anyway, but what it is, I'm being summoned to court for Section 46 of the Police Reform Act 2002 for not giving my name and address when asked to by an accredited officer, and also antisocial behaviour. And what I actually did, I just spoke to somebody that they was dealing with, and I just told them that according to the caution that they'd just had, that they'd been advised not to say anything. So I told that person, yep, you can keep your mouth shut, you cannot say nothing, and you're perfectly within your rights, and you haven't broke any common law, and just leave it at that. I did call the fella an idiot. But that isn't antisocial. And if you'd like to look at the video to give us your input properly, it's London Street Cam on YouTube. There's 4 videos there on that channel. It's to do with that, so you can look at them at your leisure, and you can perhaps leave a definite response. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll have a look at that London Street Camp. I'll have a look at that. Now, one of the interesting things about these summonses that we're getting from the police, the council, etc., is first and foremost they are being issued by the police. They're not being issued by the court. So the first thing you should do is, if it's got the name of the court on it, ring up the court and ask them for the reference who actually issued the summons. Ask them when the complaint was laid, who issued who laid the complaint, and what you'll find is that no complaint has been laid. So you want to actually write to the court and ask them for a copy of the summons. Don't tell them you got the summons, just simply say that you've lost it and you need a copy of the summons. They will write back and say you need to approach the police. So what you need to press home is, did the court issue the summons or did the police issue the summons? Then you need to ask the question, under what law have the police issued the summons? Because the courts are they're authorised to issue summonses, and they do not have any right to delegate that to anybody else. In other words, it's not a summons, it's a void order if anything comes of that. Effectively, you can ignore it. But the other thing that you need to do is simply write to the police and ask the question, Dear Chief Constable, does a man have a right to remain silent? One-liner. Ask that question, send it off, registered mail, Dear Chief Constable, does a man have a right to remain silent? And get an answer from him. So you box clever on this one and they will go away. I found that whenever you challenge them, and when I say challenge them, don't make statements to them. Ask them questions. They don't like easy questions, especially when they can't answer them. So that's the game you play there. But you need to get the court to actually do the dirty work for you by they telling you that no, they did not issue the summons. And ask the court, by what authority have they given the authority to the police to make these summonses? You'll end up with a scenario whereby they'll either drop it or they'll just bulldoze. And of course, when they bulldoze, what happens is they're revealing what's really going on. I'll look at the videos. My website, my email address is roger@thebcgroup.org.uk. roger@thebcgroup.org.uk. So if you want to send me email just to sort of have a chat about this, then do so. Failing that, obviously, I can give you my phone number. We can have a chat also. But I think you're on fairly safe grounds. What I find is when you challenge these people, they go away. They just go for the weak links in the change. They say, if you don't do this, the weak link in the chain, I should say, if you don't do this, we're going to hit you with a big fine. Up the ante and challenge them. Good luck on it.
Okay, Roger, thanks very much for that. London 25, don't forget, if you haven't got all of that, mate, Bertie will be downloading the video at some point, so I assume it'll be up by tomorrow, so you can always play it yourself, go back over it, move it forward, and get the relevant details back again from Roger, so you'll be fine on that one. That should be okay. Next question we've got, Roger, is from our special birthday boy today, who's 74. He's Spud 582, a real gentleman and a stalwart of this room, so I'll hand the mic over to Spud.
Right, thank you. And first of all, I must congratulate Roger and yourself for conducting such a professional interview tonight. Really very interesting. I brought this question up with Brian Garish, and he agreed with it, and that's leafleting. You came up with the idea that everyone can contribute, and I'm an old man, yes, I can't get around a bit, but I can certainly organise such things as leafleting, which I believe in. So, what's your idea on leafleting, and if it's successful, it's got to be done in a professional manner as to attract the right calibre of people to read it. Thank you. You're mine.
Well, happy birthday, Spud. Okay, you're right about one thing. Everybody can do something, and importantly, everybody should do something. Leafleting is part of our next strategy, and let me say I've actually already done the leaflet, and it's titled Magna Carta 2015. Now, the leaflet itself is A5 folded, A4 folded to A5, and it's quite detailed. The first leaflet is designed to attract all those people who are already awake. People will not read leaflets that they're not interested in, so we've got to focus our attention on people who are already switched on. Now, an important part of the agenda that we're following, and this is an important part of the agenda, is to build first points of contact. Now, we've already got a network of people all over the country, but we want thousands of people acting as a first point of contact. Now, the idea of the first point of contact is that we get lots of people ringing up to say, do you know anybody in this area who's interested, who's switched on? And what we're able to then say is, yeah, if you go to our website, there's a map there that shows all the first points of contact. Now, what we'll do is we'll put on the map. We actually started this, but unfortunately we found it was taking too much time and we couldn't actually cope. So we took the map off. So we're going to reinstigate that. So when you actually put yourself forward as a first point of contact, it's not to do anything. It's just literally for people to be able to go and organise around that individual. You'll know the pubs, you'll know the venues where you can have a meeting and so on and so forth. When you've got, on the map, it's a blue dot. When you have got 10 members or 10 people in your group, your dot will turn to red, and the first job of a group of 10 people is to make contact with the nearest red dot on that map. The idea is to build an anonymous and autonomous network of groups, and through those people we'll start to distribute the leaflets. So you can see what's going to happen here is that we've got a network that they can't possibly disrupt, and we've got a network of people on the ground who could literally just deliver leaflets in their street and their next door street. Not very strenuous, easy to do, and that means that we're going to get massive coverage all over the country. Following that leaflet, we've got other leaflets to focus on the lawful bank, Magna Carta, the British Constitution Group, and so on and so forth. So the whole process is going to be building around first points of contact. So each and every one of you who are listening tonight, please put yourself forward as a first point of contact. It's the very least that you can do, and it means that everybody will be doing a little bit, and the old adage is many hands make light work. So we're looking forward now to getting thousands of people who are signing up as first points of contact and who are prepared to literally maybe once a month hand out leaflets just to their street or maybe one or two streets. And also they should be able to put these leaflets at their local retail stores, and the retailers themselves are going to be very, very interested in the lawful bank because of the benefits to them. So this thing is all go. Everything that we've been doing to date is now coming to fruition, and we can move forward in a positive way. So we are going to get the bank working, and again, anybody out there who is prepared to put the names forward as an anchor in a location for the lawful bank, we want to hear from you. We want 6 people in each location. We want 100 branches set up by May. That's very doable, and we then propose to teach people exactly how the whole system is going to work. And when we've got those 100 branches in place, we will have a working banking system. When we have got a working banking system, there is nothing that can stop us.
Thoroughly enjoyed, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody in the room, thoroughly enjoyed everything that you've had to say tonight. You know where we are, Roger. Don't be a stranger. Come back in any time, and keep in touch. It's been a brilliant evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, as I'm sure everybody else has in the room. So I'll just let you wind up now if you want. But thanks again, Roger, for everything.
All right, well, the most important thing, of course, is I've no doubt that most of you are already BCG members. If you're not, please join. We ask for a minimum of £1 a month. If your freedom is worth something, it surely must be worth £1 a month. So please join BCG. Secondly, sign up to the Lawful Bank. The numbers are growing, and we will be able to do this very, very soon. But the more people we have on board now, the better it is for us. Also, Magna Carta 2015, please get behind that. We've not launched it as yet. As I say, we're in the process of grooming the website. But all of these things come together. So they're not mutually exclusive. They're a package that makes the whole thing tick. It brings credibility to the movement. It gives credibility to the management group, the Committee of 100. If you feel that you can do something, you want to do something, you've got something to offer, don't sit back and moan about the system. Put yourself forward and get involved, okay? We need you to help us. We believe that we've now put in place the perfect mechanism to actually achieve the agenda of sovereign governance. So all of us have now got something we can do, and all of us should do something. So please get involved. Thanks very much for having me, and good night, gents.
Okay, Roger, once again, thanks again, mate, on behalf of the room. Always a pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Your answers were fantastic. I personally take a lot of encouragement out of it, and I believe as a people we will get there. So thanks again, Roger. You're welcome to stay in the room, of course, but I think you're probably pretty busy. You've got a lot of work on. So if you want to go, that's fine. We'll catch up with you soon. But for anybody who's new to the room or hasn't been in here before, we're not closing down. We'll be talking, we won't be talking about Roger. We'll be talking about what Roger had to say once I take the mic off. So that's me finished. Mic's open. Game over. Thanks again.